You're recording. Oh, yeah. Okay, Mr. Mayor, we are live and ready when you are.
All right, thanks everyone. Sorry for the little technical difficulties there. I'm down in Mexico, so hopefully I'm coming in loud and clear here. Going to call the meeting to order. The 6 p.m. on March 6, 2023 is the work session to discuss the BPSO consideration for the city of Seldovia. And we'll go ahead and open it up. Heidi, and have you get started.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a packet went out to the council, and the public last week, and there were a few available here. That's also available online. And sorry, my computer just closed down. And I can share it on the screen if you guys would like, but I'll have to reopen my Zoom because it just decided to close on me. But starting off with the memorandum that is on page 3, I just wanted to begin with a basic overview of what it means to be a first-class city, because that came up at the last meeting, and what that means in terms of public safety. Home rule first-class and second-class cities are governed by Alaska Statute Title 29, and in this memorandum is a breakdown of the powers and duties of those classifications as required by Title 29, which includes public education, planning, platting and land use, property tax, sales tax, other powers, city council composition and appointment, election, term, vote, and veto, power of the mayor, power of eminent domain, and ability to attain home rule status. While public safety is an extremely important service that many municipalities elect to provide, it is not a required duty of the city. Not saying that that's something the city should or shouldn't do. I just wanted to make that clear because it has come up before, with the exception of home rule cities that may include public safety in their charter. But it is required to be provided by the state of Alaska. And I did confirm this with our local government specialist. And I have resources for people to look at if that helps, as well as the overview of those breakdown of powers and duties in the packet. For first-class cities in Alaska, there are 18. 12 have a population under 1,000. 5 have a population under 500. Pelican is the smallest first-class city, and Seldovia is the 3rd smallest first-class city in the state. Public safety provided by each community varies, including 1 city who receives services borough, 12 cities with city police departments, and 6 cities that participate in the BPSO program. And when I'm saying city, I mean first class. And I am going to go ahead and sign into Zoom right now just so I can share this for those online or that do not have a packet. If you give me just a minute. That way we can, and I'm happy to email this to anybody who wants it, or follow up with anybody who needs a paper packet, because it's a lot of great information, and then there are resources and links attached with the memorandum for people if they want to further explore what that means. So here we go. Okay, so hopefully everybody has that. This is in partway through the memo. The beginning just talks about the municipal power, Alaska municipal powers and duties that I just discussed. And the first class cities being 18 of them, 12 with a population under 1,000 and 5 with a population under 500, including Seldovia. The only department that I could find that had a similar model as Seldovia was Kalawik, and they have a population of 709 with a 1 chief department, like Seldovia has. And I just made a note that that they did lose their chief. He passed in January. So we'll see how they proceed from there. But here's some resources in case anybody wants to look at them where this information was gathered. And then to go into the more of the general topic of this evening's discussion, While this does have weight on the budget and the city is in a deficit, the general fund is currently in $183,566 general fund deficit. That's the target deficit for the end of FY 23. Really, I hope that the conversation can focus more on what it would mean to have a sustainable public safety model in Seldovia. And there are a few options to discuss. And of course, we're hoping to hear from the public and council if anybody has any other out of the box ideas for proceeding and moving forward. The police budget is currently at $149,998, and that's part of the general fund who is budgeted for appropriations of $851,174. So it's a little chunk of it, about a little more than an eighth of the budget, the general fund budget. Okay. 4 options were presented to the Seldovia City Council for their consideration at their February 13th, 2023 meeting. Those included defer hiring a chief of police until a set time, continue with the process of hiring a chief of police status quo until the position is filled, stop exploring the hiring of a chief of police and request APIA hire a second BPSO for the community. And I would like to introduce Michael, who is online and here to speak about any questions anybody has about the VPSO program. Michael is the director for the APIA VPSO program. So Bradsy's going to make sure that he can talk when he would like to, but definitely he's a resource here for questions that people might have about that option. Or the 4th option, explore an alternative method of hiring, such as a rotational, seasonal, or I had council member Swick asked me to bring information back to the council about previous discussion the council had on pursuing a partnership with a different department in the state. We pursued one with Homer a few years ago, and they ended up not being interested due to not having any staff that at the time were willing to come to Seldovia and support the department. But that is something we definitely can continue to explore if that's the desire of the council and the public. Deferring hiring a chief of police until a set time was not really recommended or supported by the council. It leaves the community vulnerable and does not support a 2-officer department model, such as 1 BPSO and 1 chief of police, which is part of the reason why the city of Seldovia entered into an agreement with APIA in order to have a more well-rounded service provided in the community and have those positions be able to back each other up. A little bit background on Seldovia's position of the chief of police. Seldovia has hired 5 chiefs of police since 2011 and has a 22-month retention average for that position. I would also note that depending on who the city hires, if they hire, there are additional costs. We've been offering a living stipend for the last 2 positions. And depending on if they are a lateral employee that can come in and just do a basic training, that's about a $3,000 plus travel cost to have somebody just go to a 2-week course, or a larger course is $14,000 plus travel. And they're away for a few months, which is why you'll see in the memo from the February 13th meeting that it wasn't recommended by a different police department to have a seasonal employee, because they were seeing such high turnover and nobody was coming back for the next season. And by the time they had somebody trained and on, it really wasn't worth it for them. But that's not to say it couldn't be different for us. So anyways, defer was not a recommended option. Continue with the process of hiring a chief of police. There are now 50 police officer vacancies listed on the Department of Public Safety's website. I do have a call in and an email in to the Department of Public Safety to see if this is a normal occurrence. The average, we talked about the average retention schedule. In 2019, the city increased the Seldovia Police Department budget to increase desirability of the position, and has offered living stipends and set time off schedules to help with retention and employee burnout. The position is posted now, and currently there are no applicants on file. We discussed in 2022, the city of Seldovia signed an MOU with the Aleutian Pribilof Islands Association for the placement of a village public safety officer in the community in the hopes that the positions could support each other and increase position retention. A VPSO was hired and is currently at Academy and is set to begin offering services in the beginning. And I wrote in the beginning of May, but I think I may have that wrong and it may be beginning of June, but Michael can speak more onto that when we get through this initial report. The third option was to stop exploring the hiring of a chief of police and request APIA hire a second VPSO for the community. And speaking with VPSO coordinator APIA Michael Nemeth, APIA would be willing to write a second VPSO position into their FY24 budget should the city of Seldovia no longer maintain the chief of police position. This would provide necessary backup for the positions within the department and provide a wide range of services to the community while also diminishing site control. Please see attached table of chief of police versus VPS duties, which I will get to in a moment. And then the fourth was the alternative hiring method of hiring, such as a rotational, seasonal, or partnering with a larger city department. We have explored this in the past. And that is something that we can continue to support if that is explore if that's the desire. As I mentioned, the Seldovia Police Department budget is $149,998. That includes insurance, gas, utilities for that building, and mainly salaries and wages and training, and some travel back and forth if they have to travel for the job. It is important to note that the city receives a $40,000 service contract payment from the Department of Public Safety for providing services outside of the city limits. And that could be impacted by whatever decisions are made. This is the quick chart of powers and duties. And I could provide that to anybody who needs. And the memo that was provided at the last council meeting with pros and cons of each position, including for option 4, there was a little bit of a potential budget breakdown for one position, 4 months of the summer, a really rough breakdown of about $62,000 a year. And that doesn't include, that's just wages and living and stipend. Oh no, it does include department expenses, sorry. And I really just wanted to bring everybody to this page before we have the discussion. I was asked at the last meeting to provide more data about the difference between the two positions, the chief of police and the VPSO duties. I did share this with Michael, and he let me know that for budget and report preparation and record management, that line that says no should be a yes. That attendance and presentation of info to the city council meetings should be a yes, and set office hours should be a yes, as well as there is a note that investigates misdemeanor crimes. It should say investigates misdemeanor crimes and may investigate felony crimes while under the direction of the Alaska State Troopers. So with that, there's just more information in the packet about the job description. Annual salary, $75,000 to $85,000, depending on experience. Job description for the VPSO position, and then background information. There we go. From previous discussions about potentially utilizing Homer for support for this department. This was a really nice letter that Cassidy Cameron wrote to Chief Robwell, followed by a letter by Paul. They did have a discussion in the department and ended up not working out for them. There were some discussions held by council and minutes provided about those discussions. And I can stop and let anybody spend time if they want to, but just trying to quickly get through more minutes for discussions. And then there was a work session where Cassidy Cameron, the previous city manager, gave a breakdown of what was currently happening within the department and past history. So if anybody has any questions on these items, definitely let me know. We can go back and we can scan it out. The budget for FY21 was 125,000. So it has definitely increased over the last couple of years. And the considerations provided in 2021 was a hybrid support model. And then let's see if we can make this one smaller. And then what it would look like to have a temporary two officer department, and what that budget would look like, which at the time was not sustainable. It was going to go from 125,000 to 144, and that was for a part-time second officer. And then for, I think the next one was for a full-time. You were looking at about 168,000, and that's FY21 dollars. So it would go up now. And I'll stop screen share unless there's anything people want to go back to and look at. But hopefully that can be the discussion tonight, is what the community would like the city to pursue going forward. And we can move forward from there.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. All right, I guess at this time, we'll go ahead and open it up to council, initial comments, and pick up where we left off last time, and see if anybody's got any certain direction they want to go, or line of questioning, etc.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have a question or clarification, if we could.
Yeah, you bet, baby. Go ahead.
Okay, and that is the printout, the spreadsheet, you've got the chief of police versus VPS duties and responsibilities, where you have the yes, no, no's. And those questions are really vital for all of us to understand. And many of the questions that are discussing, shall we go with VPSO, two of them or not, or in these questions. So my first one is just to clarify, the investigations had the yes and an asterisk, but now that is yes, no asterisk involved. Is that correct?
Thank
There's
you.
a limitation.
Yes, through the mayor. So it remains the same, that yes, they can investigate misdemeanor crimes and that they can investigate felony crimes while under the direction of Alaska State Troopers. And
Okay.
it looks like Michael would like to respond to that as well. So please go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. Through the mayor, just for a little clarification with that, VPSOs can investigate misdemeanor and felonies, and they have the training to do that. It's just usually if we have a felony case, the VPSO will make contact with the Alaska State Troopers, and it will be decided through consultation if they will move forward with that investigation, or if it's something that your troopers will come to. It's interesting, actually having trooper posts so close to Seldovia and another community I have outside my region, Tyonek, because the troopers I've spoken with, Sergeant Cox in Anchor Point, who covers Seldovia, and the Soldotna post that covers Tyonek, is very different than what I'm used to. There's a lot more trooper interaction with the village public safety officer and the communities with the village public safety officers in Seldovia and Tyonek. The rest of my region, which goes out on the chain all the way to ADAC, we have very little contact with the troopers other than by phone. So we tend to do more felonies out on the chain than we probably will end up doing in Tyonek and Seldovia, if that makes sense. But there will be that constant interaction with the Alaska State Troopers, with the village public safety officers, not only in your community, but in every community.
Okay, great, thank you. And if I could just go down to the next list, this is really the enforced local ordinances. So Heidi, this is a question for you, our city clerk. Are all of our ordinances adopted through the Alaska court system, so there'd be no limitations? Is that correct?
I will have to double check and make sure they are all up to date, but yes, we have a uniform minor offense table located in Title I. And as that gets updated, it gets sent to the court system, and the court system incorporates that into their to their program. So as long as they are located in there, then yes, that is correct.
Okay, and then Michael, if you could go through the traffic enforcement. I know I've talked to people in the public who are a little bit concerned about traffic enforcement. And I know in the asterisk, the double asterisk, it's where maybe you can maybe describe that a little bit better for us so we understand.
I'll try to. I'll try to through the mayor. With traffic enforcement, basically what that's saying is that a VPSO isn't trained to use radar. So when it comes to speeding, if a VPSO sees somebody speeding, it's difficult to give them a ticket, quote unquote, for speeding. But if it's so egregious that it becomes reckless, and we can absolutely charge somebody with reckless endangerment. So if somebody runs a stop sign when a car is trying to pass, we could charge them with reckless endangerment. If a car almost hits somebody and the VPSO sees it, or the person that's almost hit has video of it, we can charge them with reckless endangerment, which is actually much better than charging somebody, just giving somebody a speeding ticket or a ticket for running a stop sign or reckless driving, if that's helpful at all.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have at this time.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Michael, if you've got some follow-up, go ahead.
It's not to that, Mr. Mayor. It's actually, I noticed one thing when Heidi was going through the list that one of the, I think I gave you the wrong line, Heidi, for a correction. It should be taking fingerprints. It says maybe, and that should be a yes. The VPSO can absolutely take fingerprints for applications or whatever's necessary in the community.
Thank you, Michael.
Jennifer, you got your hand up?
Yeah, there might be some screaming going on. So just to keep going on, wait just a second, sweetie. On what Vivian was going down the line. So when you look at this, yes, no, it seems like they can do everything. Can we like specific examples? So say there's a domestic dispute, somebody is, slapping somebody around and they call 911. Can the VPSO go and remove that individual and arrest them?
Absolutely. Excuse me. Sorry.
Oh,
absolutely.
no, that's great. Okay. And then same thing, I'm assuming they can go, if there's something's going down at the bar, they can go and break that up and take someone out of there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's easier to like have these concrete examples because, you start talking about, well, they need a trooper to investigate felony. Well, what is that specifically? I know there's a lot of things, but, these are the examples, of what we are looking for, here. And I understand as far as the speeding goes, we don't have a huge issue with that, I like the your answer there with the reckless driving. That seems to make sense. So okay, that's helpful to know. I don't know if there's any other examples that maybe other people are thinking of, but those, were sticking out in my mind of what we do need policing around here from time to time. That I didn't know whether it could be covered by a VPSO or needed an actual police officer. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, Michael, I'll just piggyback on that. I think, yeah, what Jennifer's alluding to, and she said it pretty well, but that was a question I had, was just in terms of arrest and detention, right? Just wanting to know that if there's, any kind of serious crime or a crime that warrants someone, whether it's, if you've got some sort of mental hold or something like that, or if you've got a fight or a domestic that there's no question that they can certainly respond and arrest and detain, without question. And then obviously, I'm assuming there would be a follow-up immediately with the troopers and at that point.
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. And Jennifer, that's correct. It would be, if say you get called to domestic violence, the officer isn't going to sit there and go, is this a misdemeanor domestic violence or is this a felony domestic violence? There's somebody will be arrested. It will be decided what charges will be filed and troopers will be contacted and the investigation will move forward, either just with the VPSO doing the investigation or with the troopers assisting. So yeah, if there's a in progress crime that's going on or a crime that's committed in front of a village public safety officer, they're going to make an arrest. For things like domestic violence, it's worded in the statute for us is shall arrest. There is no choice. Somebody will be arrested. So yeah, you don't have to worry about that. We work under the same presumptions as a trooper or APD or Fairbanks PD does, that if there's a crime being committed, somebody will more than likely be arrested, as long as there's evidence there to back that up, or if the officer was witness to the crime being committed. If it's a crime that's committed and it's reported after the fact, like a theft, now something like that, if we get evidence for, that person might not be arrested. They might just receive a summons to appear in court. But for the most part, any crime committed in the presence of a village public safety officer, or things like domestic violence or a bar fight, like Jennifer had mentioned, yeah, somebody, it will be dealt with, and more than likely somebody going to jail.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I think it'd be some of the same, in terms of the flip side of that on the spectrum, some of the same frustrations when people are complaining, well, how come you're not doing anything? How come you're not doing anything? And believe me, our previous chiefs got plenty of that. And it's just, I guess, making sure that people have a full understanding of how the law actually works. This is America. We just don't go yank people out of their houses because somebody said something, right? So there's a whole series of things we have to do.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, very true.
Yeah, go ahead.
And there are times where I'll have somebody saying that to me, why aren't they doing anything? And I will basically read the statute to them and say that there isn't a statute to cover what you feel happened. Or if there is, we might just be trying to get more evidence to make a solid case, because if we go to the DA with half a case, they're not going to take it and it's going to go away anyway. So we're better off doing the best we can and gathering the evidence, especially something that happened and is reported after the fact. And they tend to be the cases that people tend to get frustrated with because they feel like nothing's being done, but sometimes you only can do so much and provide that information or evidence, say, to the crime lab to check fingerprints. And if prints come back and there's no match, there's no match. And our hands are kind of tied sometimes, just like with any other law enforcement throughout the nation. It's just the nature of the beast. Yeah, no, I appreciate you clarifying that. I had a couple more questions here. In terms of retention rates for your VPSOs, do you have any in it? Again, it might be a little different out there, super remote where you guys are working, and the VPSOs you have working under your authority, but any idea on just ballpark retention, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year kind of rates? It's interesting. Program wide, up until recently, we were about 3.7 years throughout the entire state.
Program wide, okay.
But for my region, we're actually very lucky. I've been with the region. I'm still a village public safety officer. I'm going on my 21st year. I have another officer that's 17 years. I have another officer that's 12 years. I just had 2 5-year officers leave because of family issues. They had to move out of the state. And so I have a bunch of new officers, the most I've ever had at this moment in time. But our retention through our organization has always been extremely high, comparatively speaking, throughout the rest of the state for the VPSO program. Okay, yeah, no, just even statewide at 3.7 is
almost double of what we're getting. So that's fairly encouraging, from my standpoint.
And I think a lot of that, Mr. Mayor, prior to this last year was, our salary wasn't that great. And we've been working hard to increase that. We increased VPSO salaries statewide over $7 to $7 an hour extra in the last 2 years. And we've seen the retention. It was interesting to see just even recruitment and retention increase in the last year, where we usually have an attrition rate of approximately 30% a year. And I think as of last month, it was down to 18%. So we're doing better and statewide, and that's important all the way around.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're no different than any other employer in Alaska right now, and everyone's dealing with the same thing. And the only way to combat the high attrition rates is usually through some sort of benefit package increase.
Absolutely.
No, I totally get it. So, all right, I've said enough here for a bit. I'll open it up. Anybody else got questions here on council?
Mayor Campbell,
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I kind of have a question that piggybacks kind of on what Jen Swick and yourself for Michael. How are you tonight, Mike?
I'm well, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. How are you?
Good. Those calls, there's been a lot of confusion in the last couple of years with our contract with the state police, the city's contract for the road, the calls out the road. And the question I have, are they going to be handled the same way, or are our community members going to be directed to call the state police first or 911 first? Or are they going to call the VPSO directly?
Yeah, the VPSO can, it's interesting, as a village public safety officer, our jurisdiction is pretty much the whole state. Even though I'm assigned to, actually my ID says Anchorage because that's where I'm based now. But say I'm here, I could go work outside of Nome tomorrow if they wanted me to. So my jurisdiction is wide ranging, and so is all the VPSOs. And for your question, absolutely, the VPSO would be taking those calls out of the city limits proper.
They would be taken directly.
I would think so, yes.
Okay. I guess who would at that time then, who would decide if that level of call is at sufficient enough that the trooper should be involved instead of him going out there by himself?
It just depends what type of call. If it's interesting because let's say if you have a call out on the road that somebody is shooting at somebody's house with a gun or shooting at somebody with a gun. VPSOs aren't armed, but in an emergency, we can take up a firearm and take care of whatever that is we need to take care of. So it could be a personal firearm, it could be somebody's firearm, but we can take up a firearm to take care of those situations. The VPSO,
I'm sorry. I guess for me, the thing that I was struggling with is the confusion for our community members outside. They've spent the last several years directed to call 911 directly, and then the state police would decide whether they would assign the city of Seldovia to the call or they would come themselves. It's almost like mixed messages to me.
Understood. And okay, to give you an idea here, I'm a little new to 911 because we do not have it in my original region. So with 911, when Seldovia calls 911, it should go to AST dispatch. So once AST knows and dispatch knows that we have a VPSO in Seldovia, if they call 911, dispatch will make that call to the VPSO. Okay,
I'm good now.
So I'm sorry.
I'm good now.
We had to go around a little to get to it, but I'm glad you clarified because that's what would happen. If you're calling 911, like in ADAC, if they call 911, it rings like the police department phone. It doesn't ring AST dispatch, but for your location, it goes to AST dispatch and they would dispatch the officers. They would probably dispatch the VPSO first to any call just to gather information and send the cavalry on after. So.
Right. Okay, that answers that. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, John. Harmony, you've got your hand up?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah,
Harmony. You go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. So through the mayor, yeah, I guess I was just gonna jump in and clarify that he was questioning about the dispatch procedures there. But I did have a question earlier. I think it's been answered pretty thoroughly, but I was wondering along the same lines of what Jen was referring to on that, the way I interpreted the line about traffic control was that a VPSO would not pursue somebody who was
Correct.
like an actively moving vehicle.
That's correct. Yeah, there is no pursuit. And if you notice nationwide, really, pursuits usually don't end very well. And even in the cities, they're trying to do less pursuing because for those reasons. But and the great thing where we live, Seldovia and folks in my region, somebody may be running, but where are they going to go? we're going to get them eventually. And we don't have to get them right then where we're going to push them and cause them to, God forbid, harm someone else or do whatever the case may be. But we'll catch up to them when we need to. And that's what we've been doing since the 70s as village public safety officers and what I did in my 20-year career. So there are times I've wanted to chase people, to be perfectly honest, but realize that all that's going to do is cause a bigger problem in the end, possibly. And we certainly don't want that.
Perfect. Okay. So I guess everything that I've read throughout the conversation of our initial conversation of joining this program and then our continued conversation of perhaps seeking a second village police officer, how I've communicated when I've spoken to people in the public is that they can respond to any call that's made. They can respond to an active call. And then depending on what happens on scene will determine how the proceeds go. So it's as long as the call requires action, they're going to act, and then the investigation will go through the trooper's office, correct? So I think you've already said that, but just for there's not
Absolutely.
anything that we're going to call 911 for and they're not going to respond to.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's everything that I needed to just make sure I wasn't miscommunicating on. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Harmony. Hey, Michael, one other question that came to mind too. Do you have, so I was reading through the 13 AAC 96 and in multiple sections about the VPSO program and in getting a second officer, then it refers back to 0.020 on the application process. Is that, do they typically, I mean, you have to jump through hoops to get a second officer, or are you just justifying it through a safety standpoint, or how does that typically work now?
Mayor, it's interesting. It's very new. You know, I have two communities with two officers right now.
Okay.
ADAC and Accutan, and there are other communities in the state that have two officers. You know, 5 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It wasn't even an option. And just in the past couple of years, it's been decided that it should be an option. And a lot of it has to do with officer safety and work-life balance, because for my 10 years I spent in the field before this position, you know, being on call 24/7, 365 is rough, no matter what, because you're just always spun up a bit waiting for that phone to ring. And it can be difficult. And that, we feel, is one of the large reasons for the retention issues that we had also in the program, just because of burnout. You know, especially if your community is fairly busy, or if you're active doing all the things you can do as a village public safety officer, it's difficult. But now it basically is, as long as there's money in the budget that the state has for the VPSO program as a whole, I can request a second officer, and if it's within the budget, I can have that second officer. So.
Awesome. Okay. No, that's good to hear. I appreciate your input on that. Okay, who else? Anyone else got any additional comments, questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple things.
Yep, go ahead, Bobby.
So I just want to get some clarification. I've been talking to a couple, well, I haven't been, but they've talked to me the last few days when they heard, people heard we were going to have this meeting about the traffic thing. Is it true? I guess I never paid attention. Like if, you know, nobody's around and people are speeding up and down the road, is it true that if you take a video of that, can you present that then to the VPSO and there can be follow-up with that with the troopers or with
It would
whoever?
be, through the mayor, it would be difficult for something like speeding, but if you saw, like if someone videoed somebody driving down the road and coming near somebody with their vehicle or something like that, that would be reckless endangerment. It's hard to tell. As much as I'd like to say, yeah, the video could look like they're going super fast, but we don't know how fast they're going. The VPSO could certainly go to that person and say, hey, look, you know, I saw a video, it looked like you were speeding, you really need to slow down. It absolutely could speak to someone about it, but looking to charge somebody with speeding or something to that effect for traveling faster than they should be down the road would probably be extremely difficult.
Okay, but they can at least issue a warning.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
absolutely. Yeah, I've spent half my life talking to people about things they shouldn't be doing. So,
Right.
absolutely.
And yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on that pursuit thing. Yeah, that hasn't worked out very well for us because it's happened once, I know for sure, maybe twice, and no. So I
It's a
don't
huge
see that as
liability.
I don't see that as an issue. And for the 911 calling, I just want to clarify that too. I remember in the past when we've talked about that, and I think when we talked about it, it was basically to kind of educate the public of what 911 calls are. Like you don't call, 911, and a lot of people do, and they probably will continue for, like, there's a bear in my yard. Call me when the bear breaks into your house. But yeah, don't call me if it's just in the yard. So people, I think, sometimes get confused about 911 calls. They automatically think if something's happening, regardless of what it is, they need to call 911, and that's not the case. So hopefully that's been solved at least a little bit more over the past couple of years, since we have discussed it in the past. I guess that's all I have. Oh, one more question. No. Just a second. I'm sorry. About filing reports, budget and report preparation and record management. Did that no turn into a yes?
Actually,
No. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Heidi.
No, I was gonna defer to you, Michael. I just wanted to make a point that line comes from the chief of police duties. And it's something that is specific to their duties, but I'm sure Michael could speak more to what that means for the VPSO. It's a little bit different because the VPSO is not a part of the city's budget. So it would be separate because they're part of the APIA budget.
Okay, I was just wondering because I do know, I know some reports we need that we hadn't done in the past that we're now doing to qualify maybe for grants or whatever necessary paperwork.
I'll let Michael speak to that, but I'm sure that if there is information that we need, we can work through that process.
Okay.
Yep, through the mayor, that's correct. Heidi's correct. When it said budget report preparation, I think this is where I got my numbers mixed up before because Heidi said this was a yes, but it should have been the fingerprints above. So when I was doing the line numbers, I think I messed that up. But when it comes to record management, it depends what type of records is meant here. It sounds like department records, but all of the VPSO reports and records related to cases and incidents will all go into the state arms system. So, and I'm not sure, Heidi, did Chief use arms in Seldovia?
Very recently, he just got onto the system in the last year and was
Okay.
learning the process.
Yeah, I know some departments are using that. That's why I asked. And so the VPSO will use arms, and I'm not sure if there was a cost to the city for the arms for the chief, but there won't be a cost for the VPSO. So, and then report preparation, say if you needed some information regarding incidents and crimes committed and such for a grant, the VPSO should be able to easily generate a report from their incident numbers within arms to be able to get that information that you might need for a grant. And as for budget, like Heidi said, I take care of the budget for my officers, and it's whatever I write my ask to the state and I get whatever they give me and make it work. So.
Michael,
Okay, thank
go
you.
ahead. Sorry. Yeah, thanks, Bobby. Hey, Michael, I had a follow-up on that comment that you just made about the budget there.
Sure.
So I was thinking through that, and maybe, so I know one of the requirements for a VPSO in a community is you have to have, I was reading again in the 13 AAC there about being able to provide an office, / jail detention facility.
Mhm.
There was a number of other things there. I know we've got a police truck. What in your arrangements with some of the other communities, can you give me an example of maybe some of the other in-kind services? I mean, I know you guys pay for a lot, but I mean, is it okay to offer up a few things to kind of sweeten the pot? I'm just going to come right out and say it.
Absolutely. It varies greatly between communities. Some communities have nothing, so it's very difficult for them to provide what they have to, just the office space, the utilities, communication, vehicle fuel, that kind of thing. Usually with Seldovia, it's different. This kind of popped up, and I'm trying to figure out where to get money to be able to get a VPSO patrol rig. I already have a side-by-side for Jared that should be going out there shortly. But to get a proper patrol rig, you're talking somewhere around $60K upfitted properly. So I'm working on that. But in other communities, some communities, actually most of our communities on the chain provide housing, provide utilities, provide VPSO vehicle fuel. We try to provide vehicles. Tionic provides the new VPSO their housing. It's certainly not a requirement, but it does help attract applicants and to keep people, especially with the cost of living out in the region that I mainly manage out on the chain. It's super expensive. And where the troopers get a geographic differential, say if a trooper makes $100K a year and they live in Bethel, they get a 50% geo diff, so they're making 150. So and as VPSOs, since we're not state employees, as of right now, we don't get that geo diff, but that's something we're trying to work into a proposal to bring to the legislature at some point, maybe FY25. But communities, it varies greatly across the state with what they're able to provide. But some communities provide everything that you have on your list, plus housing, utilities, vehicle fuel. Right now, Tionic, because I had no money for their vehicle, they've provided a vehicle just to be able to have the service. So it can be anywhere. It can be from nothing to everything, Mayor. So
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
no,
that's not very helpful.
No, actually, it's very helpful. I mean, that gives me a good idea of just how wide that range is. I mean, if someone
It's
has
wide.
the means, if someone's got the means and they're willing to offer that up, I can see that as being a real good thing. for those less fortunate and super challenged, then, you do what you can do. So,
Yep.
okay, no,
And-
I appreciate that.
And with that happening, say I have a community that provides vehicle fuel and a vehicle like Tionic right now, that allows me to take my minimal budget and put it to use, say, a community that doesn't have the funds to be able to provide the fuel or doesn't be able to have the funds to provide a vehicle, where I can shift some money around within my program so everybody gets the same level of service, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no,
it allows more flexibility with my budget, which I have great flexibility anyway. But yeah, it's tricky because writing the budget a year in advance, of course, and then you get into that budget and then things pop up like the Seldovia position. And that's why if we're thinking about having a second VPSO in Seldovia, I need to write my grant soon. So please let me know. It would be helpful.
No, absolutely. And that's the whole point of this conversation. And that's why I asked that, because I was just thinking and I kind of voiced this last time too, is that, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect a full for us. I mean, budget's secondary for me to public safety, public service first, then we talk budget. But if there's part of that budget, we know we'd lose, the 40 grand that the troopers pay us now, that goes away. That leaves us with 110, I think, that the city has to come up with. I think if we were smart and if we decided to go this route, I would be an advocate for using, part of that to help offset some of these things that you just talked about, whether it's, we've got means with our vehicle, or, if it's fuel, or we look at a housing stipend or something to help along those regards. So that'll give us something, some stuff additional to talk about as a council and community. So appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, you bet. Go ahead.
Michael actually kind of moved the conversation onto some questions I was going to bring up. Everybody pretty much covered everything else. And thank you, Heidi, for getting this together, and staff, of the differences between chief of police and VPSO. I wanted to touch on kind of what you would call like the daily toolkit that the VPSO might have. Can't think of a better word for it, but a vehicle was part of that, was asked, because usually you recognize where your officer is by the vehicle or where they're driving. So knowing that that's something you guys are working on, we'll be looking for a side-by-side, maybe the city, we can utilize the truck later. Is there anything else that is not presented in here that the VPSO would not be provided with that would be different as far as a tool that they would use on a day-to-day basis? You touched on, Michael, that the VPSO does not carry a firearm, but you did mention that if they're at a call where that's needed, like an active shooting going on or something, that they can use someone else's or their own. Does that mean that they are allowed to carry their own if they have one, and that's part of their toolbox they can have? Anything you can kind of touch on that would be helpful.
Through the mayor, good question about the firearm. They are not allowed to carry a handgun on duty ever. And that's a no-go. One thing I'm looking at as an organization right now, just found out that we could do this because before it was we could not spend any of our grant money on firearms, and now all of a sudden we can, which is a good thing. So I'm looking at providing all of my officers with at least a shotgun, which they would be able to keep in their vehicle, locked like you would see in a regular patrol vehicle, and have access to that, be it for bear deterrent or to take care of a problem animal, or a situation that would include a bad human. So that is something I'm looking into right now. I know Kodiak has just done it. I'm trying to figure out what process they use to make it happen. And hopefully, if not sooner, definitely in FY24 after July 1st, I would like to see that happen for my officers.
Okay, awesome. And then is there anything else? Do they carry pepper spray, bear spray, stun gun? What else would be part of kind of their toolkit as an officer? What we'd be used to knowing, they're going, especially if they're going out down the road on a potentially dangerous call by themselves. I know that
in many minds of somebody that maybe kind of not as in their right mind knows when somebody shows up, they usually have an idea of what that enforcement has. And I
Sure.
think it's important to know what they have and don't.
Yeah, it would be OC, pepper spray, collapsible baton, and a taser. So that is the standard issue tools on their belt, besides handcuffs and flashlight and the standard stuff. But it would be a baton, OC, and a taser. And you know, for the most part, I really try to hire officers that are good talkers, and the most important tool they have is between their ears, you know, because the 10 years I spent in the field in 2 communities arresting people for everything from petty theft to manslaughter, I never had to fight anyone into cuffs. And I think that's the most important thing. My officer with 17 years, same thing. I think he's only had 3 uses of force in 17 years. And it was the same guy that didn't learn the first 2 times. And then my 12-year officer, also no use of force. So I think that's key, but it's nice to have those tools if you need them. But the goal is never to have to use them. So
Exactly. And that's more where my concern is the safety of that person if they're put in a dangerous situation they enter into. And my one last question, since we talked about that you're working on getting a side-by-side for the current VPSO, is there are, even though we thankfully have cell service around here, there's still spots where we lose that cell service. What is the communication tool going to be? Is he going to have a radio in that side-by-side?
you know, that's a good question. More than likely, because with Tyonek and Seldovia, it's completely different than any of my other communities. More than likely, Jared, and if you do have a second officer, they will have Almar radios that the troopers carry. And they'll be able to talk directly with the troopers and dispatch from wherever they are, get their 911 calls through their radio. And of course, they'll have a satellite phone for emergencies and when there's no other communication.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Let's see, anyone else before I want to get to the public here at some point here as well, and then we can come back here too. Yeah, why don't we go ahead and see if anyone from the public has any questions tonight for either anyone on council or Michael or would like to offer some comments.
Yes, and we do have a hand raised of Miss Jenny Chissis, and Mr. Mayor, I just want to make sure that you're aware that we do have a few members of the public in attendance.
We're
So we may
hiding
have
back here in the corner.
we may have a few public comments, which is great.
Yeah, no, perfect. That's what this is for.
Awesome. Okay, well, I just had a thank you, by the way, Michael, for being here and explaining a few things, because I really don't have any experience or knowledge about VPSO, so this is new for me. But I did have a couple of questions. The list that was prepared by the office about duties, you know, it looks like, and we've all discussed this, that the VPSO pretty much can do everything except carry firearms, chase in traffic, and manage the budget. That's kind of the 3 that I see are the missing links. And I realize this is a list. It's been prepared by the city. Is there anything else on your list that a VPSO cannot do?
No.
Okay.
Really, there's not.
Okay.
That's kind of what I liked about the position when I first signed up for it 20 years ago, is that you get to do the law enforcement side, but you also get to do the fire and emergency medical and search and rescue and community education. So
Okay. The other question I had was in regards to hours, and maybe I went through it briefly, but what is the requirement of one VPSO versus 2, and how would their wages, are they, and I apologize because maybe I just didn't see it, but hourly or salary, and what is their obligation time-wise to the community?
through the mayor, ma'am, for our organization, all of our employees work 7.5 hours a day. I know there's a something on here that said maybe, and it had set office hours. And I like to see my officers in the office for a couple of hours a day so that the public knows that they're there at a certain time and can meet with them if they choose to. But I usually let my officers choose their schedule, for lack of a better term, because no one knows the community better than them once they're there a while. I know in communities that I worked in, the city didn't work on Friday. So Thursday nights, Friday nights, and Saturday nights were my busy nights. So I wouldn't really work very much during the day and I would be out all night. So, or if there are large parties going on, it's somebody's birthday, it's a holiday that's celebrated. So their hours might change. But for the most part, I like to see the officers in the office a couple of hours a day, unless there's an extenuating circumstance that doesn't allow for that. Like they just sat with a prisoner for 2 days before they could transport him to home, or and they got home. Hopefully they're going to sleep and not be in the office the next day. But so that kind of thing might happen. I don't know if that answers your question fully.
Well, I guess one of the things that we have issue with here in Seldovia is that it's like you had mentioned before, it's about burnout because you're on call. Nobody has an emergency at 9 a.m. when the doors open, right? They have it at 3:30 in the morning and they have it at 10:30 at night. And so I get that. So how is there, I mean, with one person and a chief of police, I mean, to me that we've always had a chief of police. So having a VPSO was amazing because it took some of that pressure off one person always being the only person. And so I just wonder how that plays when you're interviewing people for the position, because it would matter to me if I was looking to be hired, what my obligation was to the community. And if I had additional support, it would matter to me about what I was getting paid in proportion to all of that. Does that make sense? And
For sure, it does. And officers, I didn't answer part of your question. I just realized that VPSOs are paid hourly. They do receive overtime, so they're compensated for those additional calls after the 7.5 they may have worked on any given day. But you're 100% correct. I mean, when you're working alone, it wears on you. I did it a long time, and actually almost all of my guys do, except for 2 communities right now. There is a huge benefit to having 2 officers, and when we started talking about having the VPSO position in Seldovia, I was excited about it because the chief was there, and it was going to give my officer that life work separation as it would have given the chief the same. So I would love to see 2 officers in all my communities eventually. Will that happen? I hope so, but it's certainly going to take time because there are a lot of communities in rural Alaska that have no law enforcement at all. So kind of have to spread the wealth as best we can and back up our officers as we're doing that as well as we can at the same time.
Okay, I think I just have one more. What kind of community presence do you encourage for your VPSOs to engage, to be around, to be hanging out in the community, not always just talking to people because they're doing bad stuff, but being in the community? Is there some kind of, I just don't know how that works. So I wondered if there was something in the job description kind of.
That's a great question. And I know that there are 10 entities that have village public safety officers in the state. And all 10 of us probably do it a little different. But I really like, it's super important for me, for my officers to be out in the community and be part of the community. That is the one thing I drive home more than anything with all of my officers.
Okay.
Like I tell them, I'm paying you 7.5 hours a day. And if it's slow, I expect you to be at the school. I expect you to stop into the clinic. I expect you to stop into the city office and have a cup of coffee and chat. I expect you to chat with people at the store and just be that community policing presence. You know, you hear community policing all the time, And I personally think the village public safety officer position, when done right, is the epitome of perfect community policing. And I kind of picture it. Now I'm dating myself besides my gray beard and no hair. But when I grew up, there were beat cops. I grew up on the East Coast, and I was 5 years old, and I remember Mike the cop as clear as day on the street every day, chatting with people and checking doors and just making sure everybody was all right. And that's how I expect my staff to be in their communities. So hopefully that's what
That's
you're
awesome.
looking for.
No, that's really good. I appreciate that. And I guess that's it. Do they wear uniforms, or is that
They-
all?
No, they wear uniforms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, their
It's-
uniforms are brown pants, tan shirts, brown ballistic vest covers. It's kind of like troopers in brown, same style uniforms, either
okay.
the T or Class A uniform.
Okay. And do they report to you?
They do.
They do. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, it looks like we have a Miss Randy Sweet.
Okay. Yep.
Hello, this is Randy Sweet. Michael, I was wondering on the kind of the flip side of the questions that Jenny was talking to you about. What can the community do in its relationship with the VPSO to help sort of make the person feel welcome and help retain them in our community?
Through the
Thank
mayor,
you.
that is a wonderful question, and I appreciate it. I actually just got goosebumps because that's something I don't hear very often. But the reality of it is just accept them. Treat them as a person. They're there to help the community. The wonderful thing about being a village public safety officer is that you're not just doing the law enforcement side. And that's what I loved about it, because in a community like Seldovia, that's really not that busy on the law enforcement side, that person there, or those people there, will really have the opportunity to be proactive on the emergency medical side and the fire side, and being able to provide training to the community, and being at the school and teaching the kids some fire safety or whatever it may be, where hopefully they'll have the opportunity to have those positive encounters with people before they have to have the negative encounters with people. And I think it's just if I could say anything, just be accepting and be willing to speak to them and have conversations with them and learn about them, because lots of times we're very fortunate in our region. I've always said we were blessed that it's pretty much been a non-issue in all of our communities, but there are regions in the state and communities in the state that nobody talks to them and nobody talks to their family, and people won't let their kids play with the VPSO's kids. And it's almost like segregation from the 60s, and beyond, where it makes it incredibly difficult to exist. And it leads to, of course, attrition and loss of services in certain communities. So yeah, I appreciate the question. Hopefully I answered it for you.
Yeah, Randy, if you have a follow-up, that'd be fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond. Yes, thank you very much. To
Appreciate
Michael.
it. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Let's see, Heidi, anyone else from the public?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a Mr. Don Selinger.
Okay.
Ready to go? Thank you. I'm not sure who this should be addressed to, so we'll start with Heidi. And I'd like to thank John for his clarification on that 911. But in regards to the VPSO, if the city chooses to go down that route, what will be their area of governance?
Through the mayor. Thank you, Mr. Sullinger. That's a great question. So from my understanding and speaking with Michael and through our MOU, they will govern the greater Seldovia region. So they're going to govern all the way out to Jackloff, all the way down Rocky Ridge Road, and in between.
So this is a city's decision, correct?
The decision is to request a second officer, but the ultimate decision would be through APIA and their funding if they can receive one. We currently, the city did enter into an MOU with APIA for one officer who should be in the community in the next couple of months. He's in training right now.
Even though people that live out the road are not interested in this program, we have no choice.
I guess
I asked for what the area of governance was, and you're saying it's going to be the greater Seldovia area.
Mhm.
Yet, how does the people out the road have any say in this?
Through this meeting tonight and any kind of contact they want to have with the city or, because with the city has the MOU with APIA. I see what you're saying. Yeah. If you have any concerns or are in opposition, absolutely, this is the time to speak, or you can bring it to the city office at any point.
I don't think the people out the road have been been included in this decision making at all. I mean, putting out an agenda for the city, that's wonderful, but how many people from out the road do you see here
I believe it's half the audience,
of 150 plus population?
right? So Mr. Sullinger, if there's any way that you have any suggestions of how we can get more inclusion, I would be glad to entertain those. We do have postings at the post office, on the website, on our Facebook page. We have a public notice list where we send information out. We are happy to engage in public inside and outside of the city limits. There isn't a group of people that are not welcome here, and people outside the road are welcome to come and engage.
I understand. I've always
Okay.
been welcome here, and I appreciate that. I'm just concerned that we hear this talk about
Mhm.
what the city is doing,
Mhm.
but really it encompasses, as I read this, the greater Seldovia area, which I'm not sure everybody has grasped that concept, that they're going to fall under VPS governance that doesn't even report to the city.
They
I
would,
just heard.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
VPS reports to Michael.
yes, they would report to the Alaska State Troopers, who our chief of police reports to when they make calls outside of city limits. They're limited. I don't, if you have seen the Department of Public Safety contract that the city has with DPS, we are limited in our response to out the road, which has caused quite a bit of conflict over the last couple of years. So this would hopefully eliminate some of that conflict.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I hope that answered your questions.
No, you didn't, but thank you anyway. Let's try.
Heidi,
Yes.
Mr. Sellinger? Mr. Sellinger?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got to
Yes.
grab the microphone there.
Okay. Mr. Sellinger, just to try to clarify for you, the village public safety officer has jurisdiction, like I said earlier, throughout the state. And since the city was entered into an agreement with the Alaska State Troopers to cover out there, we as village public safety officers don't have to have that agreement. We work with the Alaska State Troopers as a not division, but as a portion of the Department of Public Safety. And we would be responding to calls outside of Seldovia. Basically, if somebody calls us, we're coming. We're not going to be out there harassing folks, just like we're not going to harass folks within the city limits proper. But we're there to help out when people need help and to respond to calls that we receive. So the folks who live on the outskirts of the city, like maybe where yourself lives, if you call us, we're going to come to help you, be it emergency, medical, fire, or law enforcement. And that's what we're there for. We're not there to poke or prod at anybody.
Is that was not what I was suggesting, that you were going to be poking and prodding at anybody. I was concerned, that's all.
Oh, no, that's fine. I didn't mean it that way either, sir. I just wanted to emphasize that we're there to help, and we're going to answer the calls from folks throughout the entire area, just not the city. So we just really want to help provide those services that we're able to provide to everybody within the region.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, it looks like we have a Miss Laurel Hiltz.
Okay, yep, sounds good.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, if you can hear me okay.
Yeah, I got you loud and clear, Laurel.
Great, thank you so much. So just understanding that the work session is a continuation of the process. The original intent of the council was to pursue the hiring of a chief of police for the city of Seldovia, which would include that contract with the state of Alaska for coverage of Seldovia Village when 911 calls were necessitated. And in the absence of a hireable or anybody who wanted to accept the hiring of a chief of police position, then the city is now looking to consider a second VPSO officer position, which would encompass the entire area of the city of Seldovia and Seldovia Village. Is that a fair synopsis? Okay, I see you nodding your head.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So,
Yep, absolutely.
so for me, still just would like to reiterate the desire to see our first class city stay with the chief of police model, and if supplemented with, as the contract has taken place for the VPSO, to see how that situation works out. But boy, we're being thrown off the deep end into a model that was not what the original intent was. So still a concern for me, and just want to continue to keep that on the forefront. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Laurel. Okay, anyone else from the public tonight?
Mr. Mayor, we have a Mr. Robert King.
Okay.
I guess my question for the council is, does the hiring of a second VPSO preclude the hiring of a police chief? Would you have to stop the search, or would you have to take down your job post? Or could that process continue while also, being sure to offer the public the public safety coverage that I think would be necessary through having two officers in town? Because again, you don't want a person to become burned out. And in addition to that, would that be a good way? Would this 2 VPSO model be a good way to create a relationship with an officer or officers that could then be considered as a chief later down the line? I think my concern as a resident is just, making sure that we have the necessary coverage to make sure that calls get answered, make sure that community-based crime prevention happens. But again, my question is like, does this preclude also looking for a chief as we continue down the line? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. King. Heidi, you want to take that, or I know Michael's got his hand up there as well.
Yeah, sure. I could just jump in real quick. And my understanding is, yes, it would be one or the other. There isn't the necessity for a second VPSO if the city has its own position. But it looks like Michael could speak a little bit further on this one as well.
Mr. King, through the mayor. Yeah, Heidi's correct. Like I was saying, it's just become possible for communities to get 2 village public safety officers. So if the Department of Public Safety knew that the city of Seldovia was still going to be looking for a police chief, they would not fund the second position for a village public safety officer in Seldovia, if that makes sense. They would use that money to go to a community that has no law enforcement, or as a second officer in a community that had no intention or no financial means to fund a chief of police, if that makes sense. So it kind of would preclude that if you were to still move forward with the chief of police. When I wrote my grant, they would ask that question. So.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Michael. Appreciate that. Any other questions tonight from the public?
Yes, it looks like we have one more from a Miss Randy Sweet.
Okay.
This isn't in regard to the public safety question. Heidi, did I need to say anything about the document that I sent you at today's meeting, or is that all taken care of?
I think that would be part of the public comment section after this discussion.
Okay, thank you. Oops.
Okay, anyone else, Heidi?
Yep, we have one more from Miss Jenny Chissis.
Okay.
Hello. Okay, I just have one other question in regards to if there was a decision from the council to pursue a second VPSO, if that was the case, what kind of pool do you have for that position? Because according to this report, there's like 50 positions for police in the state, and they're not filled. So what's kind of the status of that and prognosis of time to fill that position if that was the direction we were to go?
Through the mayor, good question. I would have to write the second position into my fiscal year 24 grant, which would begin July 1st. So I could start the process of looking for an applicant prior to July 1, but I couldn't hire them until July 1. We've actually gotten the Village Public Safety Officer program as a whole statewide has probably quadrupled our applicants this year. And I was actually speaking to someone earlier today, and somehow someone on Kodiak who's already an officer and a great guy and a really good officer who's been through the academy already, heard that Seldovia might be looking for a second position and has already put the feelers out looking into the position for Seldovia. So we may have some officers from somewhere else in the state interested, but if I was able to move there, I would be interested myself. So I don't think we'd have a real problem finding a qualified applicant to fill a second position in Seldovia, especially if we could start searching prior to the budget start date of July 1. We might be able to turn it over right at the beginning of July.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that.
Mayor
Okay,
Campbell.
Yep, go ahead, John.
Hey, I just wanted to bring one thing to attention for the benefit of the folks here from the community this evening. And I don't think Michael has discussed or has come up tonight, but one of the requirements of a VPSO and one of the things that the city and the council were looking at is the VPSO officers are required to be involved in the emergency services, the fire captain, fire chief. And that was we've seen that as a benefit when we have a VPSO officer is having that extra. When we first looked at this model, we had a chief here and then the VPSO could also help with our limited resources for fire and EMS. And so that was one of the things, and I'll let Mike talk about that now, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody in the community knew that that was a requirement of the VPSO officers to be active in that and engaged in that department.
Through the mayor, Mr. Kennedy's correct. That's what I love about the job. Village public safety officers aren't just law enforcement. Now by statute, all village public safety officers have to be certified as an ETT at a minimum. I have officers that are ETTs, EMTs, and EMT2s, which provide those services and assist the clinic with medical emergencies, medevacs, and such. When it comes to the fire, actually, Mr. Patterson, the recruit who's at the academy right now, just completed the 96-hour rural fire protection specialist training. And that's basically a state certification on exterior type firefighting. And when he gets back to the community, he'll be able to provide some training associated with exterior firefighting and be able to do fire safety presentations, be it in school or for the community as a whole. So Mr. Kennedy's right. You know, it's kind of jack of all trades, you know, wear many hats. And that's what most of the officers that sign up for the program look forward to. I know when I have officers, applicants looking to become village public safety officers, the one thing I look for, I'm not looking for someone who wants to be a police officer. I'm looking for someone who wants to be a public safety officer and do all of the parts of the job, just not the one. And so, yeah, I think it's a huge benefit for a small community because the more hands that you have in emergency services, the better off I think everybody is in the end. So.
Yeah, appreciate that, Michael. Thanks. Thanks for clarifying. And John, appreciate the question on that.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, are we back to council, Mr. Mayor?
Yep, we're back to council now. Go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I would like to thank everybody for your input. And for those of you who haven't been present at many of these council meetings that we've talked about for years, talking about our police chief position and how hard it is to find that person to fit that position we've gone through for years and years. And the conversation tonight, and thank you very much, Michael, for being part of it, has really helped Seldovia kind of put us on the equal education that now we all have about what a VPSO can do and related to our chief of police, which looking at our spreadsheet, it's, gosh, they do more than what our police chief position has done. So I see this as a wonderful benefit to Seldovia, and it's kind of an exciting situation. I think there's a lot of questions that have been answered tonight, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that the VPSO is a great avenue for Seldovia. And I mean, the bottom line is, for those of you who haven't been at these meetings, we are having a heck of a time trying to find a police chief to fit, not even fit, who is qualified to be interviewed and takes a position. We can't find anybody. We're at a position that we don't have anybody. And here we have the opportunity to have 2 VPSOs potentially in our community, and a beautiful dovetail, I think. But thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Yeah, Michael, you wanted to comment on that?
If I could, just on one part of it, Mayor.
Yeah,
I can't remember who mentioned about 50 officer vacancies for the state right now. You know, it's just not for the Department of Public Safety. It's pretty much every law enforcement agency in the state is shorthanded. And that's probably why I believe Heidi might have said that's why Homer wasn't able to assist at one point and probably couldn't assist today. And it isn't just Alaska, it is nationwide. No one is knocking down the door to be in public safety right now. And it's very difficult across the entire country. And So I feel for the city not being able to have the police chief that they've had and wanted. And it's difficult. It's difficult for all of rural Alaska, even with the village public safety officer program and the increase in applicants. About this time last year, we probably had 47 officers on. And today, I believe we have 67 or 68. So we've been able to attract and hire 20 officers in the last year to the program and retain a much larger number than we have in the recent past. So hopefully we'll be able to retain the one officer we have for Seldovia. And if you choose to have a second officer and I can get that budgeted, hopefully we could fill that position and have retention there too.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Anyone else on council?
Oops, I do.
Yep, go ahead.
For Michael. So I was just curious, if we decided to go with a chief of police and a village, VPSO, who in that scenario is in charge? And if we have two VPSOs, who in that scenario is in charge? And how do they split their duties?
The duties would be, if it were two VPSOs, the duties would be split as depending upon what shifts they decided to work. So both officers would do law enforcement, fire, emergency, medical within their shift or within their on-call time. So depending upon how the shifts were decided to be worked, or if they were both going to work some days together and some nights separate, that's how that would work. If one needed backup for a serious call, they would call the other and go to the call together. And with the chief of police, I believe it would be pretty much the same way. They would work whatever the shifts were that we decided would be worked, would be covered. And then they'd be, say, on call for 2 weeks and then off call for 2 weeks, or however that was decided. But that would be something that would be worked out between myself and the two VPSOs, or myself and the VPSO and chief of police.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. Yeah, anyone else on council? Yeah, I just had one comment too here, just to kind of wrap it up on my thoughts. Yeah, I mean, kind of along the, what Don was getting to earlier there in his comments in terms of, folks out the road. Yeah, when this opportunity presented itself, for us to even be able to be considered for a VPSO, I mean, that's whether we like it or not, our chief is in city limits proper. I mean, our chief is, he's impacted by what happens out the road, whether he has to respond immediately or, as now through education we've all learned, has to, supposed to run everything by the troopers prior to responding out the road. The bottom line is, out the road is no different than town. It needs some form of response, whether it be emergency, EMTs, or fire, or law enforcement. I mean, we've heard from time and time again, how come nobody will come out here? How come nobody will come out here? And I mean, that was a common theme for the last couple of years. That's all we've heard. How come the chief can't come out here? Well, the chief can't come because the troopers say he can't come. So we've got a number of examples like that. So my personal standpoint is it's a win-win, and there's no one in terms of favoritism, in terms of time, area, any of that. It's managed by an independent third party, that run quasi through the state troopers, and APIA that manages how the responses are and stuff. So to me, just community wide, and when I say community, I mean inside and outside city limits. It's a win-win for everyone if we go this route. I personally am in favor of the two VPSOs. I know it's tough for people to think about change. It's a new model. Absolutely. It's something different that we're not used to. I don't think it's setting us backwards in any way, shape, or form. I personally think it's, showing just a little bit of being progressive and moving forward with something that's new and exciting and is available to us to be able to use. So those are my thoughts. Let's see, Jennifer and Harmony, I see you guys got your hands up. Jennifer, why don't you go first, then Harmony?
Yeah, I'm hesitant to give up on the police position. Mainly because we don't know how any of this is going to work out. I mean, we all feel like this is the answer to all our prayers, and he hasn't even started yet. And I mean, bottom line, we need two people because we're going to be back in the same position with Jared in a hurry. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. I mean, maybe he'll be the next Andy Anderson, who knows? And we'll have him for 25, 30 years. That'd be great. But we don't know that. We're still asking so much from one person. I mean, it all does sound great so Michael, what is the likelihood that you will be approved for the funding for a second person?
Sorry, I was muted through the mayor. Considering I'm full right now, except for the possibility of the second position in Seldovia, it looks like that the legislature is looking to give us an additional 2.5 million for the program. And if I had requested a position period within my budget, I see no problem with having that funded.
Okay, so when do we have to make this decision, Heidi? We're not like making that decision tonight, are we?
Through the mayor, this is a work session, so no decision, no action can be taken. This is just for discussion. I would defer to Michael on what his timeline looks like for a request for a second VPSO. But other than that, then public safety considerations are ongoing.
Okay.
For my grant, I would really need to know if I was writing a position in by the 1st of May at the latest.
Okay. Yeah, so I had sent some emails to Heidi about the possibility of partnering with Homer again. Before they had asked to rotate all of the Homer officers through here. And it sounded like, from what I read, that the big hangup was that their officers did not want to do that. It wasn't so much that they didn't want to partner. It was that the current officers did not want to leave their homes and their families to come over here and spend a week rotation, which is totally understandable. My thought was to hire an exclusive officer here who would not be chief. They would answer to the Homer chief. It would pretty much be the same thing we have going with this APIA. They don't answer to us here either. There's so many ifs and whats, and I don't know how it would look. I just didn't know if maybe that would be an option. And we can't offer as much money, but if I'm remembering correctly, our chief budget is close to a entry-level patrol officer. So maybe you would be getting a different pool of applicants who are just looking to be a police officer and not a chief, someone who answers to the chief in Homer, if that's a possibility. I mean, so much of this, I don't know how it would look, but I don't know if it could be a possibility. I feel like I'm one of the only ones who wants to really hang on to this idea of still having a cop. It's becoming more difficult now that you see this. Well, these VPSOs can do pretty much everything a cop can do, but just that I know that was the initial plan when we decided to go the VPSO route, was to keep having a cop. And I know that it's difficult to hire one. Maybe this wouldn't help at all, since there are 50 positions open still. This was just my thought in case anyone else was wanting to explore that option instead of, I know it obviously seems the easier way to go with 2 VPSOs at this point. If you are awarded that grant, and what if, well, no, so then we have to stop applying or seeking a police officer. So we couldn't, if somebody turned up, then we could turn down your funding. We couldn't do them simultaneously, huh?
No. I'm just trying to understand, trying to clarify in my head what you just said, Jennifer. I believe, like I stated earlier, if you were still advertising for a police officer or a chief, the state would not fund the position I request.
Okay, right. Okay.
But if you weren't, and I explained to them that you have not had any luck finding a chief, and you're looking to move away from that as a city and to 2 village public safety officers, the odds of getting that funded are pretty much 100%. As long as the money was within the state budget for the program, which I believe it will be. Related, just trying to think, you had said something earlier I wanted to touch on. I'm sorry, Jennifer, I've lost it, so.
That's fine. I've been rambling. I just to get that thought out there of what I was thinking for
Jennifer,
a different option.
I just remembered what it was. You mentioned about possibly having Homer, the chief in Homer PD, oversee a Seldovia police officer. I don't know if they would do that. If they were rotating their officers in, they're part of his department. But to have a chief overseeing an officer that is another department's employee, I think the liability would be huge for Homer PD. And I don't even know if their attorney would let them do that. So just my thoughts on that.
Well, that's where I don't know whose employee it would be, who was all of those contracts and all that stuff was way above understanding. I just didn't know if there was any possibility that we could be like a remote police officer.
Understood. I just, the way I picked it up, I just wanted to put that out there for you, just that I think it would be a huge liability issue for Homer PD if it wasn't their employee.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to get that thought out there, since, like Laurel said, it was a workshop to discuss our options moving forward. And so far it's been all the 2 VPSO model, and, we initially had other ideas, but they're all not sounding so great. But anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer. Harmony, go ahead.
Thanks. So through the mayor, so one of my concerns so now that it's an option for us to have a second VPSO, I'm in favor of it for so many things. And one of the big things that I keep coming back to is cross-departmental communication and investigations. So if you have something let's just go with the easiest model here is you have a VPSO on 2 weeks and a city police officer on 2 weeks who serves as a dual police officer for those in the public that are from out the road. Our city police officer has a contract with state troopers and operates out the road under that contract. But if you have somebody coming in under this on the city's shift and there's an ongoing investigation that might, for whatever reason, could be an ongoing situation, and then they're taking their 2 weeks off, there's still paperwork that's going on, and depending on the type of situation, might be an evolving thing. I don't know how to like articulate what I'm trying to get at here. In an ideal world, everybody gets along and everybody's friendly and everybody's working together. But sometimes you have juxtaposed personalities, or you have people who deal with things differently. What is the process for mitigating an issue between departments in that way? So if you have the VPSO is needing to add to or contribute to or request information, is there like some sort of something in our agreement that would demand that both departments share information on ongoing investigations or anything like that? I don't know how that all works.
Yeah, I think Michael can answer your question here on that, Harmony. No, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor. Even Department of Public Safety troopers, there are some posts in the state that are 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And granted, they work for the same entity, but if it were two separate departments, the only thing I could see being an issue, well, actually it wouldn't be with Seldovia. If you had your police officer in the arms system and the VPSO was in the arms system, any information they enter on the case, same case or not, that has the same names, date of births, identifying numbers, addresses, they all cross-reference within the arms system. So let's say if the chief was still there and he started a case and had to leave and requested that VPSO Patterson follow up on the case and do another interview and add that information into arms, that would be added, and the chief would be able to access that from wherever he was to see what Patterson put in the system. Now, if it was something like a Homer officer and they weren't in arms, then there could be an issue with information getting from point A to point B, because there's only certain ways that criminal justice information can be transmitted or shared. So that would be a bit of a learning curve probably for both entities, but I don't think it's something that couldn't be worked out and figured out how to share that information on cases that may be shared, or even if they're not shared, if the officer's out of town and someone comes to the other officer and says, hey, I want to share this with you, and it just so happens to be related to a case that's ongoing for the other officer, that information could be shared. I don't really see that being an issue. It may be a bit of an issue outside of arms, but it's not something that couldn't be overcome.
Yeah, no, that seems like a really direct answer. That's great. I'm not a police officer. I wasn't 100% sure on how those system works and what it would look like between departments, across departments there. So anyways, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks for the question, Harmony. Okay, anyone else on council here tonight?
Mayor Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
I think it's about time that, so a couple of things I'd like to, put a little thank you out there to some of the senior members of the council. Early on, several months ago, I was allowed to be involved in the application process for our chief of police and our city manager and everything. And I found it to be pretty rewarding, but it's also been very enlightening. In my previous career, I spent many days on applications and interviews and discipline. And so, I think the reason we're here tonight is because I just wasn't really comfortable working with our city manager going ahead and going forward with the type of applications that we received. They were just not they just weren't there. And some of the senior members of the council, was willing to share information with me that, we have hired 5 police officers here and none of them have worked out. And yeah, we've lost them for whatever reason in 22 months or less. And for me, as a new council member, if we're really going to look at, we have a responsibility here to spend the community's money in a responsible way. So I encouraged our city manager and Bobby and some of our other council members to bring this back to the council and let's have this discussion. Where do we need to be, and are we spending the money in the right place? The city's in a budget deficit. That doesn't make my decision whether we hire an officer or not. I've said through this whole process that I'm in favor of continuing with the model of a chief of police, and I was all for the VPSO, the first VPSO officer, because of the added things that they bring to us. Maybe our chief would see some alternate shifts between that and the VPSO. The VPSO is required to be involved in our fire department. And I've had conversations with our medical director about the need for our fire department and rescue. And so I see that's all really important. I see the benefit for it. But after, being able to sit and listen through the VPSO interview process, it's been pretty enlightening. I haven't heard anything I don't like that's going to come to the community. I've followed up with Jared a couple of times through this process. I spoke to him as recently as last night. He has had nothing but positive to say. He's upbeat. He's excited about coming to the community. I wished we could find, another officer here in the community, So if I had anything to say about tonight's meeting, I really appreciate everybody's efforts. But I don't know that we've really got the answers that I want to see. I got a lot of answers here. Please don't take me wrong there. But the answers that I'd like to see is I'd like to see us visit the current contract model that we've used over the last 5 years, or 5 officers. It's a 2-year contract. I don't know, is the answer maybe to be a 3-year contract or a 5-year I don't know. I haven't been here long enough, but I know that we put out a lot of money to move these folks up here from out of the community. If they're not certified, we have to send them to the full academy. That costs us a lot of money. What's the payback for the community? Do we get the money back? Maybe we'd get it back if we could require that they don't get some of those. I don't know what the answer is, but right now, I guess I'm beginning to soften, because right now the easiest option I see we have is to proceed with a second VPSO, because it fits our model. I don't know what the answer is, but I'd like to see us have a little bit more discussion on if there could be something done with the current contract. And that's really all I have. I really appreciate the senior council members allowing me to taking a step back and letting me be involved in the interview processes. It's been enlightening, and I've really enjoyed it. So anyway, that's all I have tonight.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, I think there's, given that the date that, Michael threw out there, no later than, May 1, and certainly we wouldn't, want to put him right up against his back against the wall on that. For
Right.
myself, I'd like to, continue, keep going forward here. Should probably be an agenda item on, all the next couple meetings as well. Try to keep hammering through this and get to the bottom of it. So, yep. That's I see we're going to have, continue to have discussion on this, and then obviously, welcome any additional further input from folks both in town and out of town alike. So, yeah, with that, any other closing comments from anyone on council here on this subject here tonight?
Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
I've been on the side since I've learned more and more, especially having our side by side here, of where I look at the budget a lot, but I also wanted to really prioritize. That's why I wanted to see this is I wanted to just know, because we don't have a chief of police right now. We've been looking, what holes do we have? That's what I really wanted to see tonight. And coming out feeling really good to the fact that I don't see any holes, but benefits to where we're at. So that's a positive. After tonight's discussion, my gut goes towards the model of having the 2 VPSOs, because it's something that we have a better chance of getting right now, getting that coverage, that care, that person in the community. But I would love to have those in the community and listening tonight, and that who's on that model wants to see that chief of police to come and let the other council members know what those reasons are, because I know where my mind is going and many of us are. And I just want to know if there's something that we're missing, or if it's, is it just that person, that title, the statue of having a chief as part of the city, what is it? Is there something that we're missing, so that we don't make a big decision and have it come back to us later that there's something that we missed? So thank you all for being here tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. Well said. Okay, anyone else?
And Mr. Mayor, if you don't have anybody else on the council, we do have a member of the public who'd like to make one more comment. And then there is a public comment in the laydown that is separate to this meeting, or separate to this discussion.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We can go ahead and conclude that item discussion topic B. Okay, did Jenny want to comment still on the public safety, or on
Yep.
comment to the audience?
Yeah, the public safety.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate, Ashley kind of covered what I was just going to say, but I feel it's a real advantage to have Michael right here to say, I mean, you've been really upfront, Michael, about what VPSO is and how that works. And I hope I'm saying that right. VSPO, VPSO. Anyway, and I feel like we're getting a really good handle on that. But I want to ask, just honestly, I feel like Jen Swick, when she says, I'm kind of hanging on to this police chief, that's what we've had forever here. And are we hanging on to it for the wrong reasons? And so my question to Michael is, what would we see all the benefits of a VPSO. We see that, but what do you see we might be giving up if we let go of our chief position? And that might be a hard question for you because you're on the other side, but I think that's really valuable. You have good insights.
It's interesting. And to be honest, I think you're just giving up the title chief. And the two communities that I have two officers in right now, both used to have their own police departments, both their own one chief police department. Accutan did away with theirs 20 years ago and has had a VPSO ever since, and now has two VPSOs. And ADAC came to me, this is probably 6 or 7 years ago now, when they were having difficulty finding a new chief and had problems retaining their chiefs. And they've had a VPSO since then, and now they have two VPSOs. So to be honest, I think you're just giving up a title. There's really no difference in level of service. So just my thoughts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Jenny. That was a fair question. And yeah, Michael, appreciate your response there. All right,
Yeah,
we'll go ahead and wrap. We'll go ahead and wrap
Mr. Mayor,
up.
I just have one more comment if I could.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think Michael is very much correct in saying that what we would be giving up is a title. I've been trying to be very optimistic about this whole process, but I have to get a little dig in there. I've been in on all the police chiefs that we have hired over the past since Andy's retired. And I'm sorry, maybe one, I have seen no benefit to having a chief of police. What I'm hearing and seeing, what I'm reading as far as the VPSO, I believe we need a peacekeeper And I think the VPSO kind of fills that bill. Yeah, so anyway, that's all I've got to say on that.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap up the public safety considerations for the city tonight. That was item B, and we'll move on to our final item, comments of the audience. It's item C, and I believe, did Randy have a comment?
Yes, we have a Miss Randy Sweet, and she provided a quick email and then followed up with a resolution, a draft resolution, and the list from the school district from the KP. Sorry, I'm going about this the wrong way, and I can let her speak on it. In speaking with Miss Sweet, she has asked that the council consider writing a resolution in support of the student-based allocation rate bill. I think that's SB 54 that's coming through the state legislation at this time. And in her letter, she spoke to the fact that the school board had a meeting today and was meeting again this evening with proposed budget cuts. And along with that, they won't vote on that proposed budget until April 10th, and it will be provided to the assembly on April 11th. So I believe Ms. Sweet is on the call and can talk more to that, but that is in your lay down with that consideration of council to write a resolution in support of the SB 52. Am I correct on that one, Randy?
It is SB 52 and SB and HB 65. So I'll just kind of the reason I understand I needed to give you some information today. So if you were to take, you would need some notice so you could take action at your city council meeting. So that's the reason I'm providing this information to you tonight. I became aware of the Kenai Peninsula School District budget deficit because I heard about the pool being closed, and then I talked to school board members and then found out that the school district has a $13.1 million deficit, and they've done some work in getting that knocked down, and it's detailed on the piece of paper. But one of the ways that they can reduce it is to have the Kenai Peninsula Borough use up to the maximum allowable cap for the assembly to provide the $2.1 million. We currently have in the school budget COVID funds that are still available, but that'll be the last tranche of that money. So that's the $6.4 million. They're also in the process of working this. So some of these figures are going to be slightly different, but they have a fund balance that they use to offset expenses. So right now they're down to having a deficit of about $3.6 million deficits. And so what they're proposing to do is cut theaters, swimming pools. They're increasing some pupil to teacher ratios, eliminating student success liaisons, some school supply reduction, extracurricular travel, safety equipment related to that, hockey ice funds, and cuts to athletic directors. So those are the things that they've identified as cuts, and they have to have a balanced budget provided to the assembly. So that's why they're doing all these cuts. So the reason, part of the reason for why we have a budget deficit is that the student-based allocation, and that's like the state provides, and in our state, in our constitution, the state is responsible for education as well. So that's, I think, why we have the state spending money on education. but the state has not increased the student budget, the student base allocation since I believe 2017. And so it just hasn't we haven't kept up with inflation. So as a result of that, the Senate has passed a bill and they're working on it, but it has a proposed increase of $1,000 to the student base allocation, and the House has a $1,250 increase. So we have that picture. And then when you're looking at the budget deficit this year, you should also know that the $6 million that we got from COVID will no longer be there next year. So that's going to be another thing that needs to be filled. So if either of the bills get passed, they would be able to eliminate the budget deficits. So what I'm asking the city council to consider is to have a resolution that tells our legislators in the state of Alaska that we as a community support the increase to this to the student base allocation rate. So that's kind of for your information to think about. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them. If I don't know, I can find out and get back to you. And then I will also, I'll get the most current numbers that the school board is working with so that they're accurate, because they're slipping a little bit. So thank you for listening. And do you have any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Appreciate that. Any questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, Randy, I missed if you said that if either one of these bills pass with the SBA allotment, would that also mean that the borough would have to budget to the cap also in order for there to be not this budget deficit?
I think there may be some opportunity for that not to happen, but I think what the unfortunate part of how things are working now is at one point in time, I think there was forward funding of education. And so what is happening right now is that the assembly has to vote on the budget on the 12th, but the state of Alaska probably won't, the final on the state of Alaska budget may not happen until sometime in, could be June. So that's what, so they have to do what they have to do to get the budget in place. And then they'll do an adjustment once the state does whatever they do.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Vivian. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say thank you to Randy for bringing this to our attention.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Randy. Appreciate that. Anyone else from the public with anything additional tonight?
I'm not seeing any. Oh, there is one from Michael.
Okay.
I just wanted to take a minute to thank everybody for having me and thank everyone for their questions and the conversation. And I look forward to sitting in on more meetings and helping move through this process with Jared. And if we decide to go with a second position, and I'm always available. So don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I wanted to extend my thanks as well for myself and the council, just to make making yourself available again to us tonight to answer all the community's questions and the council's questions. We really appreciate your time and what you put into the program. Yeah, we're very optimistic that this is going to be something that'll work out well for us, regardless of how we go on the second officer. We're excited to get the first one and get things rolling here. Hey Heidi, can we go ahead and get that on the agenda for a resolution for the addressing the base student allocation?
Would you like to sponsor that, Mr. Mayor?
But yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. I'll get that to you.
Yep, and I can work with you on that. So, all right, any other closing comments before we wrap it up, guys? Okay, appreciate everyone's time tonight, and we'll go ahead and stand adjourned, and the next regular meeting will be Monday, March 13th at 6 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Buenas
Okay,
noches.
yeah. Have a good night.
Night, night.